All right, everybody, welcome to episode 13 of the H2 podcast. It is April 21st, 2024. Let's get into the mission statement. It's just me tonight, no Andrew. Our mission statement is to provide humble retail investors the latest news, filings, and happenings in the most accurate way possible and without compromise. We are investors in Humble. We're part of the Humble community on HUMBL Social. We're both passionate about blockchain technology. We are not speaking on behalf of Humble employees or contractors, insiders, financial advisors, or compensated anyway. Any reproduction of this podcast without explicit permission is prohibited. So the first thing I want to talk about, and there's a couple subjects we're going to cover tonight, is the company statement on the legal matter. This is something that was posted on by Brian on Friday, I believe, and it has to do not with any sort of lawsuit, but it does involve somebody having a felony guilty plea in San Diego regarding an ongoing legal matter. Now, regarding the legal matter, I'm not sure if many people remember this or if this was the actual incident, but there were actual, records of harassment from several, maybe past shareholders, maybe existing shareholders. I don't really remember who they were, what they were, but essentially, what this means is that, yeah, there was a guilty plea by some bad actor who was harassing Humble, and it's a felony. Maybe it was crossing state lines, perhaps not. Who knows? One thing that's important with this is if you go to look for any sort of records or whatnot, I'm not sure if you're going to find them. We've had several people look into it already on our behalf, and we weren't really be able to we weren't able to find anything really. So whether it comes out or it doesn't, I'm not sure if that even matters. But what does matter is that a person that was harassing Humble and their their employees making threats towards their founders, their families, and employees on social media platforms. Obviously not acceptable, and I'm glad that was taken care of. So that was released on Friday. What's coming next in the next couple lawsuits, not sure, but we'll have to wait for updates on those, and we won't necessarily be covering those. Don't want to be deposed in a few years or whatever, but it's something that everybody should read, and usually the links are posted on HUMBL Social. Right. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the offering or the Regulation A. Okay, so what is a Regulation A? Essentially, it's a public offering, uh, which means that you're exchanging shares for money. There's usually fees associated with it on the accounting or legal side, and it allows current investors or future investors to invest at typically a better price than what you would buy on the open market. But there are some stipulations where you would need to buy a certain amount of shares, and usually it's a higher quantity that may not be attainable quickly in an open market. So here's the actual details, and Brian's mentioned the Regulation A quite a few times. It's not really anything new to anybody that's been paying attention. But the price per share, roughly, or I believe the average would be 0.0006, and that would be the assumption that some of the offerings would be offered between 0.0003 and 0.0009. So they're taking sort of an average or an aggregate of that, and we're closing between 7 and 8 right now. So if you were to buy in this, whether you get the better deal or the worse deal at 0.09, you would be able to pick up larger amounts of shares outside of the open market, which could cause something to go up or down. The total shares offered are 3.33, repeating, of course, billion. And the gross proceeds would be $2 million off of that. Accounting legal fees would be $180,000, and the total proceeds to Humble would be 1.82 million. So who can participate in this? Like I mentioned, it is open to the public. I'm sure there would be more instructions going forward. You can always take a look at the A/A statement on the SEC website. There's a ton of information there. It's pretty much all the information regarding Humble that you usually see in your S1, but lots of information in there. So getting back to who can participate, well, there's a minimum purchase requirement per investor for $20,000 US. So that's the least amount you can purchase. Uh, no sale may be made to you in this offering if the aggregate purchase price you pay is more than 10% of the greater of your annual income or net worth. So what does that mean? That's sort of like how they do things with accredited investors, but the next point sort of moots that. But basically, if you have $1 million in assets and you make you know $100,000 per year, you take the higher one of those and you take 10% of it. So you'd be able to buy $100,000 worth of it of Humble based on this. And obviously, the company is it's subject to accept that as well. Um, Different rules apply to accredited investors and non-natural persons. So non-natural persons, anybody outside of the U.S., and accredited investors would be typically people that have, I think, over 2 million in net worth or $250,000. It really depends country on country. So I would check that out if you're in the U.S. Um, and see if you actually do meet the accreditation. Uh, if you meet that criteria, you may be able to invest more or less, depending on where you're at. So this wasn't something new. I know there's been some folks not happy about further dilution, but they did say what it is for. It's for if you listen to the last meeting that Brian and Senior held. It's for marketing. It's for expansion. They wish they had more money so they could go to more counties. They wish they had more money that they could approach more teams with the ticketing and whatnot. So that pretty interesting stuff. Interesting to see more or less how fast it gets filled up, right? So 20 grand is no joke for most retail investors, and then having you know looking for larger investors, you want to have higher net worths or higher annual incomes to buy larger chunks of those shares. Okay, yesterday was the AFL preseason kickoff. There's quite a few posts on HUMBL Social about Brian being on the field there. Senior even posted one showing like the AFL uh, verified by blocks. Uh, the QR code and everything like that, and then some photos here. So a couple things that were interesting to me is one that they're actually this is in Oregon as well. So this is the Black Bears. Humble's the one that is doing the ticketing exclusively for the Black Bears. They're using Humble technology. So interesting that they're boots on the ground makes sense. I believe they were also boots on the ground for the Motherland Festival a year ago, last summer, I guess, and scanning tickets there and making sure all the kiosks were working and whatnot, right? So they're there, they're troubleshooting. We see Alfonso there. I think that's Bowmeister. I think there's Brian there. There's Jeff there, and there's actually Junior there as well. Proof of life that he's still here and he's still working hard. And then on the left hand side, you see them actually scanning tickets. Interesting. You don't really see any special devices in their hands, at least from what I can make out. Maybe that has to do with their existing app that just came out that has to do with reading QR codes. And there was some pretty interesting stuff on that. Maybe we can pull that up shortly. I'd also like to get into Pompei 3. This was a very cool promotion that they were doing, and basically we talked a little bit about it in the last community call. Let me pull up the actual page here. So here is Pompei 3. Uh, Okay, so if you go to the HUMBL Social homepage, you can actually go to Pompei 3 here. You can get a lot of information here. What I thought was super cool, not only the certificate of authenticity, right? Um, very important if you're buying diamonds, if you want to source your diamonds, make sure they're coming from a credible source and isn't, based on war or anything like that. Very important. Um, here's your standard QR code, whether that's put on the documentation itself, kind of makes sense. So here's sort of the process, right? So do the QR code scan, right? Get it verified on the registry, right? So here's your actual ring, and then linking the multimedia, I thought was such a game changer, right? I think most people, maybe not most, but depending on who you are, you may have a video. Maybe you go to Disney and you propose to your wife, or there's a slew of videos that I've seen from my friends proposing to their girlfriends at the time, and having that linked to the ring itself, and maybe even having that as sort of like a family heirloom, and passing that on through generations would be extremely cool. Just total game changer. So Pompey 3, uh, very cool. I know they just did a giveaway, um, some diamond rings. So somebody from Humble, I believe, Joey won that. So congratulations, Joey. But there's a lot of good information in here for Pompey 3. They're doing some interesting things. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about that shortly. So I did want to bring up the latest app as well. So I believe that was Senior that put that in there. It's actually a Humble company update. So the venue scanner, if you go to um, the iOS store, I guess the Apple Store, the Google Store, um, you will actually be able to see this. I believe it's about $70 to buy it. It's not for use for end users like us in here. This would be something for somebody running a venue, right? So I would assume, kind of makes sense if we're connecting some dots here, that they're using this on their phones right now, right? So they're in there, they're connecting uh, and scanning to wallets that these folks have, and they have tickets located on the Humble wallet, and they're gaining access into into the venue. Pretty cool stuff. This is far above and beyond just ticketing. I know it says for ticketing here, but it says the product is intended for use by companies, schools, arenas, fairgrounds, galleries, and individuals. So there's your subset, right? Basically, the people that are gatekeeping to get people within their venues. They may need to scan and validate Humble tickets across multiple areas of venues, such as entrances, right? That's going to be your main one. Parking, very cool if you had parking built into your ticket and you just have the same QR code. Food ordering, smart lockers, and more. Now, I did get some questions from some folks around the smart lockers. This became very popular, especially around COVID, when everybody was freaking out and nobody wanted contact with them. So these are basically, you have you have your smart locker that you may have rented for a Leaf game or a Knicks game or whatever, and you want to put some stuff in there, or maybe like even like at a museum or an aquarium or something like that. You have a bunch of stuff you're schlepping around with your kids. You rent a locker. It's now attached to your Humble wallet. You hit a button on your Humble wallet, and that locker opens. Right? No more lock and key. It's all tied to your wallet. Like I said, these became very popular during COVID. So a lot of IT shops within larger organizations, to drop off IT assets like phones or computers, they use those. You 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 may have even seen them at like pizza shops. I think Little Caesars has a bunch of those, um, in order to have people like skip the dishes or these other food apps that are going to get your food for you. You unlock it with the code or whatever, and it opens, and you don't have to interact with anybody. So this was sort of foreshadowed. If you go back to uh, the humble the the video that Brian and Senior made a couple weeks ago, it was foreshadowed. So it says, click here. That's just the video. And then go to 1 hour and 2 minutes and 49 seconds in. Senior actually talks about this stuff. So pretty interesting things happening here. I haven't downloaded this. I don't think anybody. It's really applicable to anybody here, unless you wanted to start sort of exploring that for your venue. And then I would definitely get in touch with the Humble team. So very cool that they're doing the ticketing themselves. I'm assuming in this there's a lot of training that's going on, a lot of verification of that the transactions are going through on the back end. And testing is the best way to find out if there's any issues with the software and to see what the capacity and the load management is going to be on it. So very cool stuff. All right, so I talked about Pompei. The last thing I have, and this is going to be a short one, guys, is the Humble Authentics deal of the day. These seem to be much higher ticketed items. They've been over $1,000, I think, every single time. So there's a helmet by Jeff Gordon that sold out, I think, within a couple hours. There was also a hockey jersey from Bobby Orr, one of the greats. That also sold out really quickly. And then there's a Josh Allen, um, and these are all verified by blocks, and you can see them on the registry and whatnot. And then finally, there's a Josh Allen one that I think is around $1,000 as well. And they're all one of one. They all seem to be pretty high quality stuff. This is an official Bills helmet, official Bruins jersey, and an official NASCAR helmet that's signed by Jeff Gordon. It's his team as well. So check those out. A lot of them sell out quickly. I'm wondering if we have more of them in the future. I may have to jump on that Josh Allen one just because I'm a huge fan. But also, it's almost like a million, million Humble shares that I could buy with it instead. So we'll see. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand it over to the community and stop recording. If you do want to connect with us, please DM or tag the H2 podcast on HUMBL Social. I'm not calling it HUMBL Social 2.0 anymore. It's HUMBL Social now. Or you can join the H2 podcast group as well. Completely up to you. We read DMs. I'm not on Twitter very often. We do have a Twitter account, but I'm not answering any DMs on there. I rarely go on to it. So with that, everybody have a great Sunday. Let's start up the community call, and we'll talk to you next week.